What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Drunken Boxing Podcast. Let me give you a bit of an update here. We are now, today is the 15th of February, 2020. I'm sure the world is fully aware of the situation, not only in China, but seems to be affecting the world with this coronavirus, been renamed COVID-19 lately, and how it's affected the world, but more particularly China, where I am in Beijing. Although it's not as bad as the Hubei province and Wuhan, for sure in terms of infection, it's not as bad, but in terms of, or it's also not as bad in terms of lockdown and restricted freedom of movement. Obviously, they have their reasons. I'm not going to get into that. But here in Beijing, we have had basically, since just before Chinese New Year, we've had the instruction to remain at home. Companies are closed. People aren't being told to go back to work. Schools are closed. Universities are closed for the time being, it seems like, until at least the end of March. And since about the Chinese Lunar New Year, which was 25th of January, up until now, I've basically been indoors all the time, apart from grocery runs and the occasional trip downstairs to get something. We are basically in our apartments all the time. So with that, as you guys know, my podcasts, I prefer to do them in person. It's a lot more intimate. It's a lot more sincere than doing it by phone call or online voice call or something like that. I find that people seem to open up more. With that being said, and the current situation, that's kind of put a bit of a pause in my ability to interview people. But in order to give you guys something to at least tide you over for this month, I have here a podcast that I did. I was a guest on another podcast called the Talking Fist podcast about 2 months ago. And this podcast was a pretty in-depth discussion on Xingyi, Bagua Certification, other related Chinese martial arts topics, etc. And the host of the Talking Fist podcast, Ryan Patrick St. George, he's got a very good perspective and outlook on how he asks questions and interacts with guests. So I'm putting it up here in case you missed it over there. Should be of interest to people irrespective of your personal Chinese martial arts or martial arts practices, but specifically for those key disciplines which I practice myself. We actually cover a lot of very often asked questions and dispel a lot of often misunderstood beliefs and myths regarding Chinese martial arts, practices, theories, underlying ideas, etc., which I found far too prevalent amongst Chinese martial arts practitioners worldwide. I often find myself answering a lot of these questions over and over again. So it was good to be able to address at least some of these in this podcast, and that should be of interest to a lot of people, I would suppose. I would also suggest and recommend people check out the Talking Fist podcast for his other shows, which he interviews quite a variety of martial arts people from differing disciplines and styles, and it's a fairly well presented and discussed podcast. With that, I'll put all in the show notes. I'll put the links, etc., to the Talking Fists podcast for you guys, so you can find that too. I hope you enjoy this one, and stay safe out there, everybody.
Hello, everyone. This is Ryan St. George with the Talking Fist podcast. Today with me I have Byron Jacobs. He's been living in China for several years. He's a former Wushu athlete, and he's kind enough to join me today. So, Byron, thank you very much for being here. And how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me. We've been trying to set this up for a while, so I'm glad we got it going today. Yeah,
definitely. Thank you for your patience as well. Now, I know you like to drink during your podcast. We can't see each other, but I can go get a glass of whiskey real quick if you've got some whiskey, and we could have some whiskey as we do this.
If I start drinking whiskey at 10 a.m., because that's the time here. It's your evening, but my morning. But you go ahead. I've just had another cup of coffee, so I'll be drinking that this morning.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, next time I visit China, I'll head to Beijing and we can do this.
Then we'll totally have some drinks together.
Yeah. I just hate to drink alone. Okay. So let's get straight to it. I know you've gone over your background a lot in other podcasts. I've heard you on Ken Golet, and on your own podcast you talked a bit about it. and on real fake swords and fake real swords, I believe. That's an interesting podcast as well. So I don't want to go back over that. If anyone wants to know about your background, they can check those out. I kind of want to explore different things with you.
Go ahead.
Now, your Xingyi and Bagua is your main arts right now, correct?
Yes.
Okay. What? This is kind of a bit of repetition, but I still want to hear it again. Why did you get into Xingyi? What drew you to that? Because you were a Wushu athlete, and you've done a bit more. Like, I think you've done judo and karate before, right?
Yeah, I mean, I started with Japanese arts as a child, and judo was one of the extracurricular activities in my primary school when I was when I just started like primary school, like grade school. I don't know what you call it in the States, but first year of school, we had judo as an extracurricular activity, and I was already like martial arts crazy. I'd watched Bruce Lee movies, and and I wanted to do martial arts, but that was the only one that was within reach. So I started with judo at school, and I loved it. And I did karate after that because it was also something that was practiced within my family. My uncle was an instructor. So I did those two arts mainly. And I did some Japanese eclectic kempo style in my teens, well, 10, 11, around there, after that age. And before I started doing Chinese Wushu.
Right. Okay.
Back to your question. Look, I mean, I'd done a various amount of different styles when I became a competitive athlete. I did specific styles that are featured at world championships, but I also did some other styles that I was interested in. And Xingyi for me always stuck out simply because of its aggressiveness and its very, very apparent power, which was hard, clear, crispy, and I just liked the attitude, the spirit, and the energy, like its physical energy that it manifested, and I always wanted to do that. So that's what drew me to Xingyi Chuan.
That is awesome. Very interesting. Okay. My thing is this, is that people that do those very physical martial arts like judo and karate and the very athletic ones like sport wushu, it's kind of hard for me to imagine a lot of people being mature enough to see the benefit in an internal martial art. Do you see where I'm going with this, Byron?
Yeah.
So how did you get to do that? Because think about it, judo has sparring, karate has sparring. It should. And most kempo styles have sparring too. And maybe you didn't spar in wushu, but you were still very athletic, moving around and stuff like that. What drew you to the internal arts?
Well, interestingly, just to give you a little bit of background that I don't know if I covered in other podcasts. When I was doing wushu at the place that I started training, it was about an hour's drive away from my home, and I actually used to stay there. For a few days during the week, and I would do whatever was available. I did both forms, but I also participated in some of the sanda training. So I just enjoyed martial arts as a whole, and I must say there's something. I don't want to make it sound I can see things that other people can't see. But for me, when I look at a movement and Okay.
All right. So continue, Byron. You were staying at that training facility, right?
Yeah. The point being that you asked the question as to people that come from a very physical background, why would they want to be interested in internal art like Xingyi? Well, I was saying that I look at movements and everybody looks at movements in their own way, and that's probably matured over years as well. But I don't really need to look at a million movements to see some key points there about power, practicality, issuing of force, connectiveness with your whole body movement, etc. And that was one of the things that stuck out. I mean, you can see it in a good boxing punch. If you watch Tyson in his prime when he was hitting things, or just moving and shadow boxing, you can see it. I mean, it's there. A really high-level karateka just needs to do one punch, and you can see if the punch is a very connected, high-level movement or just superficial and weak. And Xingyi, from what I'd seen from some people, expressed these points that really attracted me. And it was just that I realized, okay, there's something really refined and special here, and that's what drew me to it in that sense. But to also add to that, while Xingyi is classified, especially in more recent times, as internal, this term internal, firstly, I don't like that classification because I don't think there's any such thing as a purely external style or a purely internal style. I mean, as I said, high-level boxing, if you look at refined body mechanics and connectiveness, well, that's internal principles as we understand them today. So, and the same could be said about any high-level martial art when it's done correctly at a very refined point. So I don't really like that term. So, for me, martial arts is martial arts. Internal, external, I'd rather say good and bad, high level and average. And that's not specifically a problem with the arts as a whole. It's mostly a practitioner, individual problem.
Right. And correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't that term internal like kind of coined relatively recently? That's not
it's a new term.
At all, right?
It's a new term. Yeah, it's not very historical. If we look at it in history, there is an old stele, like a stele, a carved tomb script from a very long time ago that mentions the word neijia, but we know very clearly in more recent understanding and research into this writing that it was more political writing than stylistic writing. When they were talking about neijia and waijia, it was political writing against. It was at the time when the Manchus were starting to invade China, and they're considered external foreigners, and internal being Han Chinese, the Ming, and the talking about internal will defeat external. This was political writing to a degree, so they were trying to hide the anti-Manchu writing that they were putting there. It wasn't necessarily to talk about a style, but even if it was talking about a style, we have no idea. Well, not we have no idea. We know that they weren't talking about Xingyi, Bagua, or Taiji necessarily. So this is what some people connected in terms of trying to say, oh, look, in antiquity there is the term, but that there, like I said, there's no connection, and the actual coining of this phrase in relation to Xingyi, Bagua, and Taiji is a very recent thing, when they started to have some practitioners had an interaction with one another here in Beijing in much more recent times. So, and even that, I would say, wasn't taken so seriously or as crystallized as people try to pretend it is today.
It's almost kind of become, like, to me what you just said makes perfect sense. And if you actually train in martial arts and you don't get too mystical, you realize that you don't really need to say internal, external. We do it now to be simple, just for communication reasons, obviously. But you notice with some kung fu people, like they're kind of arrogant. I study in an internal martial art, like they're deeper philosophically or something. Does that make sense? Do you ever get that sense?
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah, that is the problem. That is, they do that, and then the second thing they try to do is they try to equate internal with something that's not even on the physical realm anymore. It's something that uses a completely different power or drive, or then they go into the mystical energies, which is not actually. Even in the old scripts written by, for example, within Xingyi canons and other treatises, old writings, it wasn't defined as this. Even when they used the word qi, it was so multifaceted, and it had such a wide scope that they used this word for. That today they've taken just bits and pieces of it and try to extrapolate on that to try and make it, no, it's some mystical power. Meanwhile, the reality is you're talking about people that wrote things 150 years ago that didn't have a scientific background, that they had to use the nomenclature of the culture and the times of the people here and the understanding. So Chinese medicine, etc., that was the extent of which they had terminology to use. And that's what they latched onto and they used in their writings. But it was such a wide, like a term that grasped so many aspects. For example, they couldn't explain, bioenergy. For example, your body, the energy that it uses to move your limbs. They would just say qi, right? Or they would relate certain emotional aspects and just label it as qi. They would, even down to the word for weather in Chinese is 天气, the sky is qi. So it's just it was so multifaceted that we try to look at it today and say they were talking about this point, but they weren't. That's just not true.
Mm-hmm. So around what time did martial artists in China start saying 内家 and 外家? When did that happen?
It's in the last 100 to 150 years or so maximum.
Oh,
so
very,
we're talking
very recent.
About, yeah. You're talking about the turn of the early 1900s. So that's about the time that it started to be crystallized. And incidentally, even the classification of Shaolin and Wudang as internal and external also happened around that period. Just prior and including the period of the Nanjing Wushu Institute.
Okay.
They classified the two departments as Wudang and Shaolin.
Okay.
So, and actually they dropped that at a later stage.
Was this during the Republic era?
Yes. Yeah, it was during the Republican era.
Awesome. Okay. I remember reading about some of this. You're helping me piece it together, and I think you're illustrating a great picture for the people listening as well. I appreciate that. Now let's backtrack a little bit. During your Wushu training, what was that like compared to the Japanese styles? Because you were a lot younger at the time, right, Byron? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I was. I was in my teens. So, for me, one of the things that I at the time, I don't know if you recall, back when Jet Li movies started becoming really popular or finally becoming out into the West, and it was like, oh my God, this guy can really move in
Lethal
such
Weapon
dynamic
4,
and
right?
amazing ways. Yeah. So, Wushu as a competitive sport training, I just knew I wanted to do some form of Chinese martial arts that was likened to what I had seen, and Wushu sport or competitive Wushu training was like it. But my teachers were older generation athletes or ex-athletes, so their methods of training were similar to the first odd generation of professional athletes in China. So it was a heavy focus on stretching and flexibility and basics, but there was still a lot of I would say traditional content. Like for basics, we would do tantui, which we learned like as the traditional tantui lines. That was part of our basics, and we'd learn some cha-chuan combinations because the reality of sport wushu is it's been in three big disciplines that are included in the forms competition. There are three main categories, and it's changquan, which you can translate to long fist, but let's just keep it as changquan because that's better. Nanquan, which is southern fist, and taiji quan, which are obviously everybody knows what taiji is. But there are three main categories, and within each one, they're supposed to be representative of sub-styles. So changquan was mostly focused on styles practiced in the north, but the competitive aspects or the competitive forms included techniques which are mostly derived from cha-chuan, hua-chuan, hong-chuan, and pao-chuan, which are some of the styles practiced here in northern China. And tantui is often practiced within some of those styles traditionally anyway. So I focused on that in the beginning, and so the basics that I did were also derived from cha-chuan. I learned a little bit of cha-chuan, which was how it was supposed to be. And of course then the physical I hate to use the word, but acrobatic aspect of it too, because there were difficulty techniques like jumping techniques. At the time I started practicing, we were all doing compulsory routines. It wasn't free. Everybody was doing the same routine, but there were some jumping techniques in there with some acrobatics. Now, Nanquan, on the other side, one of the key points was one of the main style categories was to comprise of styles that are popular in the South. And the compulsory routines and methods usually, and by and large, comprised of techniques derived from choi lei foot, hung gar, hop gar, which is called shachuan in Mandarin, and maybe a little bit of white crane, and other techniques. And then Taiji obviously is supposed to be comprised of techniques and methods from the various Taiji styles. So yeah, that's in a nutshell. But I focused in the beginning on changquan And so I was doing the basics of that. And incidentally, in more recent times, athletes don't even do, I don't want to speak for all of them, but in general, they don't practice much of the Tantui basics or the Cha-Chuan combinations or a lot of the traditional techniques, which is supposedly what the style is made up of. The same in the Taiji side and the Nanchuan side. The shift from compulsory routines to self-created routines, and with the introduction of the scoring system for degree of difficulty, which places such a heavy emphasis on the what we call nandu, or a degree of difficulty techniques, which is all those jumping and acrobatic techniques. They're so important and they're such a large part of scoring that a lot of the time the athletes have to focus more and more on that and less on the other aspects. And that's why it's shifted the direction of the sport too. And even down to the judges who barely understand in general those traditional aspects and methods, and from the styles that are supposedly comprising, that the disciplines are comprised of. So I kind of gone off on a tangent, but I wanted to give you a bit more background there.
No, it's fine. Tangent away. Go for it. Now, so Byron, would you consider your era of Wushu training kind of close to the end of like sport Wushu, having some traditional aspects and compulsory routines in it? Is that kind of the end of that, would you say?
Well, yeah. I started with the first set of compulsory routines, which were quite heavily based on traditional content. Mm-hmm. So I also then learned the second, and then following that, when I started becoming an official, I also did the third, obviously, and I've taught the third sets. But we've gone from the first generation to the second generation to the third generation of compulsory set routines. The third generation was made specifically for juniors and had pushed more degree of difficulty techniques into the junior championships. So now what happened was there was, at a younger age, less focus on, I would say, the techniques from the styles themselves, and more focus on the acrobatic elements, because if you have to do those third generation routines, they've got a higher degree of difficulty requirement within them, so you need to spend more time on it. So I would say yes, it's affected the content and what's focused on by athletes over time, and it's an issue of the rules and the focus of the competition. So that's what's happened. Yeah, I
mean, I personally don't have an issue with Wushu at all. I know I've heard other traditionalists say it's a modern day heresy. I don't consider that to be the case at all. I think as long as people are honest about what it is, it's not a fight sport, obviously, right? So,
well, that's the issue here. I mean, we're trying to now sit and say what we understand as what it is what it is, and that's okay. I mean, I've got a slightly different perspective, and it's a little bit, I must say, over the years and time and my background in training, I would say, yes, you can say what you've said is correct, but also no, we can't ignore certain points. So there's a couple of things. One, we're using the word Wushu. Right. Whether anybody likes it or not, if you say, no, but Wushu refers to that competitive, flowery stuff. No, we're using the word Wushu, which means, and in this case, Chinese martial arts. And Wu is martial. So let's not forget that it's supposed to have martial content. And secondly, it's supposed to have content derived from Chinese martial styles. So let's be honest about that. If we're going to say we're going to negate all of that and ignore all of that, then we should call it something else too. So for me, I think that's one of the key points. The other side of it is, okay, we're trying to create a sport out of this, out of a practice that isn't necessarily a sport. Now, there is going to be some things you lose, but you can't throw everything out. And a good example will be to look at what karate sport has done, and they've got the Olympics, and and they've done a better job than Wushu has in terms of their kata, because their kata is you select a kata from a list of routines that you're allowed to perform. Mm-hmm. You're not going to create or reinvent karate. It is karate by default because the content that you're allowed to do is karate. It's recognized and defined as karate. Now, the only gripe would be, and I've heard this from traditional karate people, that say that the methodology or the method of execution, and then again the focus of competitive aspects of performance of those kata has slightly shifted from the traditional ideal. All right, but that's a compromise you're going to have when you try to standardize and make a sport out of anything. So,
right.
For me, I would say that in some aspects, Wushu's gone too far off that scale, and
right.
it's well, we can't put the label of a banana on an apple and just say, hey, well, fuck it, it's fruit, so just
right.
deal with it. No, let's rather not lie to ourselves and everybody else. And I think there's another way to do it. There's nothing wrong with constant evolution of a sport and going back and saying, right, we messed this up. How do we go forward from here to kind of pull it back somehow? You're not going to make everybody happy. But let's just try and find a way that we can do it better than what's happening now. If something's spiraling downwards, you can't just say, oh, well, it's spiraling, so that's how it is. So you know what I mean?
Yes.
And that's the issue that I have, and I think a lot of people have. And that was the work I was trying to do in my position working in the organization for so long, was to try to kind of pull it back slightly into not only from a content point of view for the representation of Chinese martial arts, but this actually affects everything. And this is what people don't realize. It affects the judging. Because if you have no requirements, you have no definition, then you have no basis upon which you can judge. And then it just becomes a personal opinionated thing.
That's what I wanted to ask you about.
And thrown.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. Yeah. How do these judges judge it when they don't know traditional martial arts or traditional kung fu?
Well, that's the issue. So, when we've, so I'll give you a bit of a breakdown on the judging system of forms. Mm-hmm. As it stands at the moment, we've got three groups of judges. The A group, B group, and C group. The A group judge is called the quality of movements judges, and they have a table of deductions for each style or event that has a list of techniques with errors. And if you see that error, then you do the deduction, right? So you're defined very clearly in this table. The B group judges are called overall performance, and they actually award points out of a value of 3, maximum being 3. For aspects like power, speed, rhythm, content, choreography, and style, etc. And that would be pretty subjective, but I'll come back to that in a minute. And then the C group judges, which are called the degree of difficulty judges, because each routine has to have a registered amount of techniques that you choose from this table of degree of difficulties. It could be jumping tornado kicks to a certain degree with a connection. And then these judges just sit and look at the criteria for successful execution and either deem it to be successful or unsuccessful in line with that, and you get awarded the points in line with that. Now, the C group is pretty clear. You registered a 360-degree tornado kick that connects with horse stance. Either it's successful or not in line with the criteria, and you get the points. Now, let's go back to the A group and the B group. The A group is clear because it's defined by the tables, but then it's also limited by the tables. So what that means is that people that practice are only going to focus on those deductions that are limited in those tables as being important points of execution of their techniques, just so they don't get the deductions. That's how sport drives an art. If you're going to give a reward or punishment based on certain criteria, then people over time who are wanting to win will simply focus on that criteria. We've seen it with combat sport too. If you have, for example, the 3-point rule now in MMA, so if 3 points of contact are on the floor, you cannot knee or kick the guy in the face. What will happen is, when you talk about a martial point of view, is they will simply put the third point down instead of defending their face, because they know if you kick them in the face, it's illegal. Now, how does that shift martial arts? In the street, you do not put a third point down and think that your opponent is not going to kick you in the face. So it affects things. In Chinese martial arts, in Taolu competition, in Wushu Taolu competition, we have the same thing. They are completely guided by these set of rules. And it's important that you modify these rules and adapt them when you see certain problems result. So the A group judges, there's a very, very small scope of deduction there. And I would say the deductions that are placed there are of a basic level and not of an elite level, or you've got certain aspects within execution of techniques that are crucial in terms of the style, in terms of the martial art, and they're not there. So this is one aspect that needs to be kept in mind. But the biggest problem is the B group judge, or the overall performance judges, because they're supposedly awarded. All right, so the issue with the B group judges is it's supposed to be an evaluation by a judge looking at the entire routine as a whole. And the criteria there are things like speed, power, content, rhythm, choreography, style. So we could say these are all comparative. So you're not only going to award points based on your own understanding of these aspects, but you're going to compare each athlete against the following athlete within one division based on these criteria too. So it begs the question is, what is the defining basis of these aspects? What is speed? What is power? What is content? And most importantly, that the word style is there would mean that content coming from the style that is presented should be there. We can't, and what it's kind of, it used to be quite split. So when you've got something like a set routine or a compulsory routine, the style aspect is, well, it's not free because it's already set. Everyone's doing the same routine. So you know that the techniques are from the style. So you're looking at the stylistic expression. But all of these aspects are based on experience of each judge. First generation judges and athletes probably had a greater exposure to the stylistic methods of these traditional styles, their power, their expression of power, etc. How the rhythm would make sense in terms of the traditional methods of these styles, cha chuan, hua chuan, etc. But as we go down the generations, and as people and judges became more refined or focused completely on the sport aspect, the only body of knowledge that they have to refer to is what they have learned within that sport. So what happens is it's very hard for somebody to say the style is correct because he's never actually learned any cha chuan. He's never actually learned any hua chuan. He doesn't understand the stylistic expression, method, content, and principle of these styles to say, okay, I'm going to give you a higher score than that one. The only thing they can do is like, oh, well, I know this Wushu's performance routine is considered high level, so I'm going to judge it in comparison to that. So it starts to become very skewed in that regard. An educational process is what is needed. And education is something that has to not just come from a course, but has to come from a lifetime of training and continuous training. So if you're going to be judging, for example, Nanchuan, you should have experience in the Southern styles, at least some of them. Otherwise, it becomes you're judging things based on a criteria that is undefined and it's totally subjective, if you know what I'm getting at. So that's where we've had this, for me, the biggest problem, because it's undefined. Unfortunately, what's happened is that a lot of judges are not educated or trained enough in those classical methods. And this is another thing. People will, especially in the sport, will think, oh, but traditional Wushu is something completely different to sport Wushu. It shouldn't be considered that. Wushu should be Wushu, and then the one is just standardized. There are standards for competition, and the other one is just done in line for your own goals and objectives, in line with what your teacher teaches you. But it's still Wushu, and that's right. Where we're having a bit of a problem, if you ask me.
Yeah, you made a good point with the karate comparison, mainly Shotokan karate. I think they've done, like you said, an excellent job of keeping it traditional and yet having a sport aspect to it too.
Right.
And I think one of the big thing is that they have a formal sparring competition in karate. And
yes,
one thing that I don't understand with kung fu. I've trained in kung fu and karate styles. Is why do most kung fus not have like a formalized kumite type thing? You know, like there's sanda, but that's kickboxing, and it looks almost nothing like the traditional movements. Why do you think Wushu doesn't have some kind of formal sparring competition?
Well, competition would be something that comes out of a society that has stability. People don't really think about sporting competitions when your society is in total chaos. So in times of civil war or in times of invasion or other wars, sport does not flourish. There's no time to focus on it. The second aspect is if a society is starving, if a society has got famine, if a society is extremely poor, then they also are not really going to focus on sport development. So a formalized event like a sparring or a competitive combat event usually comes out of stable societies, and we can talk about what stable means for 3 hours, but that's a whole different kettle of fish. But if we look at China from the end of the Qing dynasty up until I would say the 1950s, it was in a period of chaos. So not only was there a revolution to throw over the imperial system, which lasted a lot longer than other countries' imperial systems, but even before that, there was mass starvation. Then there was the invasions by foreign powers. Then there was the Civil War. There was the Japanese invasion. Then there was the Civil War. Then there was the initiation of the policies of the new government, total reform. You don't have so much time to sit and think about making a sport event. Now, if you throw this in comparison to other martial arts countries like Japan, even though there was the period of war outside of Japan when they were doing their invasion of China, within Japan, you could see that judo, which was probably the first one to start having a formalized competitive combat format, was coming out of a time when you could say they were relatively stable in comparison to China. So that's one of the reasons I would say that a so-called sporting event that is standardized didn't come out of Chinese martial arts sooner. Even though the Nanjing Wushu Institute started that, the issue with the Nanjing Wushu Institute was that it was an experiment, and a good experiment, that was cut short very early because of the Civil War here. So had they had a longer period of stability and no civil war, I don't think we'd be having this conversation today. I think something would have come out that is akin to judo's competitive format and karate's kumite format. So that's one of the key points to keep in mind. And so that's one point. The other point is that in the 50s, when the Chinese government decided to start develop Chinese martial arts as a sport, it was a government endeavor. It wasn't. It was from the top down. It wasn't something that flourished from the bottom up. If you compare it to karate and judo, it's something that flourished from the bottom up. And for me, you need government support, especially in today's day and age, to do something successfully to a degree in this field. But it has to be naturally something that evolves from the bottom up. It has to grow naturally from the people and the circle of civilians. It has to be a civilian practice to flourish upwards. That just gets nurtured from the top or supported from the top.
Right.
In China, it wasn't something that grew naturally. It was something that the government said, we're going to do this, so you guys over here, and of course their resources were people that were either in the government or working or willing to work with the government. You guys are going to do this, make a form competition. All right, we don't want any fighting. You're just going to do forms. Just make a Chinese martial arts form competition. And then after some time, they're like, oh, shit, we need a sparring competition. Let's quickly do that. So it wasn't something that grew out of the martial artists themselves. That's the point I'm trying to make here.
Right.
So, of course, when Sanda came out, even though it was labeled as a Chinese martial arts system, and don't get me wrong, it's evolved into a very effective combat system, it wasn't something that grew out of the Chinese martial arts practitioners themselves to a degree. They do have sparring and some Lei Tai ideas in certain traditional practices, but not a form. What I'm talking about here is a formalized sport event. So that's probably one of the key reasons why Sandai is in such stark contrast to practices like kumite or randori in judo.
Right.
So, yeah.
I mean, very well said. Because, like, if you look at Shotokan Kumite or any karate kumite, it clearly looks like the traditional training you're doing, in the dojo. And then if you see them fight in MMA like Lyoto Machida and the few karate fighters that have crossed over, you can clearly see that they're doing traditional Shotokan karate. And I know...
Yeah, like Wonder Boy's got a good... well, he comes from a slightly varied background, but he looks very much the way he moves in the UFC, like a lot of high-level kumite fighters coming out of karate too, bouncing on the feet, in and out, in and out, in and out.
The wider side stance, the Kempo. He comes from a Kempo karate background, but again, maybe we'll touch on this a bit later. I was going to go into the Kung Fu and MMA thing, but not quite yet. I'll backtrack a little bit before I want to go touch on a few other things. Okay, so you talked about went through Wushu, which I appreciate. That was interesting. I want to go back to Xingyi Chuan.
Okay.
So just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to say internal, external, if you don't mind. I don't mean to irritate you.
No problem.
Okay, cool.
No problem.
Now, for me personally, studying Xingyi Chuan is more difficult than learning external martial arts. Like I've done kickboxing, karate, sandai. Do you consider internal martial arts to be more difficult to learn and grasp than external martial arts?
I'll use something that might help you understand why that is the way it is. If we look at a martial art as a building, like a tall building with a lot of floors in it, we could say that the ground floor that you enter in on would be very rudimentally physical aspects that are based on gross muscular movement and development, without so much of a focus on higher things, which would be the second, third, fourth floor, like structure, connection, whole body coordination. So if you're starting a lot of martial art, which is a logical way to start, they start at the ground floor with gross physical movements until you have a certain development of muscular development and certain coordinated actions in terms of using or utilizing those muscles and your limbs. They start from there. I would say that as you go up the building, most martial arts, if they're gonna really become high buildings, will go through all of those stages, and you will start to focus on other aspects as you go up the floors, like structure, like connection, like whole body coordinated movement, like force generation from using the correct mechanics, waist, rooting, etc. As you go up the building, different floors will have higher and more refined methods to develop. So most of these styles, they will start on ground zero. I would say the problem with Xingyi and Bagua and even Taiji to a degree as well is that they start from the second or the third floor. They're not really meant to be, their method was not aimed at people that have basically zippity-doo-dah, zero martial ability, especially something like Bagua. We know historically that all of Donghai Chuan students had some form of background in martial arts. They weren't just people that just came off the street with zero physical coordination. They've never done any martial arts action. They have no strenuous experience in doing strenuous physical activity. They all had this basic. So he started on the third floor. So a lot of the content and the methods start from a basis that is already developed. And it gets more and more refined as you go up. Xingyi, Bagua, Taiji, I would say, start you on a higher level. Like Xingyi, for example, we start already day one, Santi Shi. That's structure training. That's connected structure training. That's what you're doing right there. I'm not even worried about, okay, are you able to even hold your hand in a way that's connected to your elbow, that's connected to your foot? I mean, that is what you're worried about. That's what you're worried about from day one. Whereas with other arts, you'd be like, okay, let's see if you've actually got a muscle to move your arm. Can you hold your arm? It's gross. So it's gross body function and muscular movement. So the requirement that it starts off with is higher. And that's not to say that it's better or worse than any martial arts, because they all go through this. It's just to say its starting point is slightly further down the road.
Well, I've never had it explained so well to me before. That's awesome, Byron. Thank you.
Oh, I'm glad.
Very well said. Okay. All right, so when did you start training Bagua? Was it around the same time you started seriously studying Xingyi, or when did that start?
Okay, well, there's a bit of a reason why I do Xingyi and Bagua. So I had initially wanted to just do Xingyi. That was what I was looking to do. My teacher, my master, is a person named Di Guoyong, and he is a famous Xingyi practitioner, but he's also a fourth generation Bagua, Liang style Bagua inheritor and practitioner. And my goal was to do Xingyi, but also to simply follow exactly what he did in his training progression. He started off as a kid with his teacher, his Xingyi teacher, doing what would be labeled as Shaolin, but it was, in those days, Shaolin was an eclectic term for various different practices. So I won't go into the details of what they did. It was traditional. It was, some of the routines are quite well known in terms of name, but rarely ever seen. But it was labeled as Shaolin, and he did that because that was ground zero. If you're coming back to the ground floor, coming back to the building analogy, to set his physical abilities. So he did that for a few years, and then in his teens, his teacher said, "Okay, you can start Xingyi Quan," and he made him stand in Santi shirt. And what did his teacher say to him? You have to stand for a long time to wash out all your habits from the Shaolin Quan that you did. And it was the same teacher, by the way, but he was a Xingyi specialist. But he just realized that kids need, and the younger you are, or even adults, I would say, need some sort of physical basing of basic gross movement, muscular development, coordination, etc., before moving on to refined methods. So he then did Xingyi for a very, very long time. He mastered Xingyi before he started doing Bagua. And he started doing Bagua with another teacher, Li Ziming. So I did the same thing. I did Xingyi for quite a number of years on a daily basis with my teacher. And then he said, "Okay, Byron, I want to start teaching you some Bagua too." And in the beginning, I never had any thoughts here and there about it that I wanted to or I didn't want to. I just wanted to follow what he said. And he said, "Okay, Bagua's got very good body mechanics, methods, concepts, and stepping that can boost your martial arts." See, this is what people seem to misunderstand. We're learning martial arts. We're not learning styles. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. The goal is the style is a method to get skill. So you're developing skills. Each different style per se has a method to help you develop certain skills. But the goal should be that you develop skill. So as far as I understood it, and the way my teacher explained it, was that Bagua would help me to further some skills. Some skills are already there from Xingyi. Some would help to be further developed by Bagua. And that's exactly what Dong Haichuan did with his students. The founder of Bagua, Dong Haichuan, his main students were Yin Fu, Cheng Tinghua, Liang Zhenpu, etc. Yin Fu was already a Luohan Zhang, so-called Shaolin master. And he taught him Bagua to further develop and refine and take him to another level. Cheng Tinghua was a wrestler. So he taught him Bagua in line with his wrestling to further refine and develop his method. So I saw Bagua training as an ability or an opportunity to do the same thing. So I started learning the Liang style methods. And I must say, I've seen guys come to my teacher and with a direct request to learn Bagua as their first art, as their first martial art. And I mean, no offense, but literally, if they start with these methods they very rarely get a whole body sharp, hard power, like I would say a killing power. Because Bagua, without a basis, is it's very hard to develop a skill, because it's something that's, what can I say? It's like putting a turbocharger in a car. That's the point. Mm-hmm. If you don't have an engine, turbocharger might make noise, but you know what I mean? So yeah. The Bagua, that when I started doing Bagua, I noticed all my Xingyi body mechanics and force and whole body power coming out. And it's actually something I noticed when I compare my teacher performing Liang style Bagua compared to some of his martial brothers. Just the key difference in whole body power, force, an overwhelming and imposing attitude that all he developed with his Xingyi before applying it to his Bagua. So I started doing Bagua quite a few years after starting Xingyi, and now I practice them both side by side, but Xingyi will always be the core of my practice.
Right. I spoke to Ken Gullett. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to that, but he kind of talked about, he said he would say Bagua is the most difficult of the three arts he studies: Tai Chi, Xingyi, and Bagua. All right, so would you need going back to Bagua, would you need a background specifically in Xingyi trend to fully utilize and understand Bagua, or is Tai Chi?
No, I wouldn't say you'd have to. I'd say if you have some sort of a background in martial arts, it's going to help you. It's like saying I want to do advanced calculus, but you haven't got a basic mathematical understanding. You should have a basis upon which first. Otherwise, it's going to be quite hard for you to do the next thing, if you know what I mean.
Right. But any martial art background, would you think is okay?
For sure.
Oh,
for sure.
Okay. All right. So, because you see a lot of people trying to teach Bagua. I spoke to a guy before I moved to Texas. I was communicating with him, and he was saying that he went and did some course and got certified in basic Bagua, which sounds really weird and doesn't make any sense to me, And you get a lot of that. Would you say Bagua is one of the more difficult styles to learn in an authentic way?
I would say any martial arts today, in today's, especially outside of China, but I hate to say that China is the only place. It isn't, though. That's not what I'm intending. I'm saying in terms of and it happens in China too, so it's not limited to outside of China, but it just seems to be the norm outside of China. In the structure and the method and the way that martial arts are presented and taught today, it's not as it's people are looking for something quick. They go to class 2 or 3 times a week, they practice for an hour, and they want a certificate, then they want this, and you can't do that with especially with a more technically demanding style, but you really can't do that with almost any martial art. It's something that you need to grind away at for very long periods every single day. And the key point is that in those really important foundational periods, which are long, they're not a short 1 month or something. We're talking about the foundational period would be probably 3 years. It's really important that you have a teacher who's correcting every single technical aspect all the time. So in today's environment, people rarely have this method or and this discipline to practice. So with the more complicated and refined a style is, it's going to be harder to attain anything out of it in the way that people are doing it today. I mean, I can teach you the 5 elements linking form in 2 hours. I can teach you the movements. It's not really going to be Xingyi, but that's the way people are approaching the art today. They think that martial arts is a collection of forms or techniques. No, it's the techniques and the forms are skills to develop something, and right. The development of that something is the martial arts. That's the real thing there. Mm-hmm. It's not all the other stuff. So
makes sense. It kind of reminds me when I was doing Xingyi, I was learning a lot of the linking forms, but I don't feel like I was actually doing Xingyi. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You're going through the motions.
That was it. I had no idea what the application was, how to generate power. Not a thing. I was just literally going through the motions. It was cool because I like kung fu. I like martial arts, but I wasn't getting anything, out of it. Okay, so I wanted to go into the techniques of those two arts. The two arts you're studying now. Do you do anything else, by the way, besides Xingyi and Bagua?
Yeah, I've done jiu-jitsu for about 4 years as well. Brazilian. So. Okay. Yeah.
How far did you get in that? Or are you?
Well, I still practice. So
okay, that's
I'm still going through that. But yeah.
That is awesome.
And that's an interesting story too. I initially started going to do that because I wanted some non-compliant people that are, well, they're not people that I would be so worried about injuring. I know that sounds terrible, but just to go and try some of my current methods on. And what happened was, because it was somebody that introduced me to the teacher and I just started playing with them, what happened was, through my exposure to them, I realized how much depth there is to what they do on the floor. And that's something that I knew nothing about. I mean, we have grappling, takedown, and limited work, which is usually finishing somebody on the floor, but nothing that goes into what happens if I'm on the floor or in such a position, and how can it be used in my advantage or to my advantage or against me. And I thought, okay, well, this is something worthy of further investigation and learning. And it is a totally different world on the floor. So it's not contradictory, but rather complementary to what I do with my Xingyi and Bagua, I must say.
Right. I would say grappling is complementary to any stand-up or striking art for sure.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So you kind of went in with the intention of trying to use the body mechanics and I guess the rooting or whatnot that you learned in your Xingyi and Bagua, right?
Right.
Were you able to apply any of that in any of the positions that you start in when it comes to like randori or rolling in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
Yeah, I did, and I think some of the guys there were slightly surprised as well, just from body movement, mechanics, etc. So, I mean, of course, you're still going to make mistakes on the floor because you're doing the wrong things, but body mechanics, movement, motion, and some of the takedowns and locks that we use in Bagua, I mean, I successfully did use it. So, yeah, it was fun.
That is awesome. Did Xingyi and Bagua and the mechanics from that and the stances and movement, did that help prepare you for takedown defense?
Oh, yeah, totally. They had a tough time taking me down.
That is awesome. And you made it a point not to use the previous judo training, just use your Xingyi and Bagua, right? When you first.
Well, I mean, I don't know how to say that I couldn't use something that is trained internally, whether I used it or not. I mean, like I said, we develop skills through our styles that we practice, and those skills, when you sweep the floor, they come out too. So you never know what you're using when you're using.
Right.
So I can't say that I didn't want to use something or the other because the pudding. Whether you put sugar, cocoa, all of the stuff, the pudding is there. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's all there. I can't just say I'm not going to use the sugar. It's just there.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the techniques of Xingyi, if you don't mind.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so people have told me before, I don't argue with people, whether it's in real life. I try to avoid that, especially if I don't know much about it, or my podcast, whether I agree or disagree. I have guests on to celebrate their life and their martial arts training. That's the goal of this podcast.
Okay.
But people have told me before, a couple in particular, that Santi Shi is not a fighting stance, which is weird to me. Because when I look at Santi Shi, it reminds me of Muay Thai. And I know it might sound weird, but bear with me. The weight on the rear leg, a lighter lead leg, and being ready to attack. Okay? To me, Santi Shi appears to be a fighting stance. You doing Xingyi Quan for so long Can you confirm or deny whether or not it's a fighting stance?
So let's first take a look at a few aspects of Santi Shi. Santi Shi at its foundational level is a method to understand and develop the key requirements of Xingyi Quan.
Okay.
All right, so the key requirements of Xingyi Quan in terms of weighting, like where your weight is, your structural alignment, the things like pressing the head up, rounding the shoulders, sinking rounding the back and the chest rather, sinking the shoulders and the elbows, dropping the waist, not having a posterior or anterior tilt, and actually connecting with the ground. So at a basic level, that is what Xingyi Quan is going to teach you: structural alignment and basic requirements. Okay, but and then of course it develops your leg strength because you're standing. But when we talk about a fighting stance, there is no such thing as a static fighting stance. So to say that Santi Shi just standing there, because just standing there is not a fighting stance. You could say that. You could say that, but when you move, you're supposed to move while maintaining all those things that you have developed and are required in Santi Shi. So all those connections. It's just a matter of learning how to move that structure. And I'll tell people to often look at go watch Choke. If you watch that old documentary with Hicks and Gracie, but you don't even have to watch that. You can watch some of his older fights, and you can watch some of the older Vale Tudo fights. But you'll see that the method of movement, because look, when we go from Santi Shi, then we immediately should start working on footwork as the next step. So if you look at guys like Hickson, when he was fighting Vale Tudo, or even in Japan, in other events, whatever, he stands in a very similar way, back-weighted, at a slightly oblique angle, and he edges forward by moving his front foot and then his back foot, and then his front foot and then his back foot. And he edges his way in like that. Well, that's basically Xingyi's method. So that's what you're doing there. The placement of the hands, well, like I said, Santi Shi is static. The key about Xingyi is that it's not static. You're moving. So the placement of the top hand and the lower hand are just initial starting points. They will move from there. They don't have to stay there. But the general requirements of what is going on between force, between your hands, the structural alignment, your stance, and the way you step, that won't change a whole lot, even when you go into combat.
Okay. So just being static and not moving is not a fighting stance, but using those concepts and principles in motion it would probably resemble Santi Shi, but in motion. Would you say that?
Yeah. But your hands would do what is needed. Right. They probably have a slightly more closed or higher. Look, your lower hand that's jacked down onto your dantian in Santi Shi would probably raise slightly. So there's no gap between your upper arm and your lower arm. Mm-hmm. But that happens in motion in any case. So, yeah. Okay.
And what about Bagua? Are you, and again, forgive my ignorance, but are people, if they're fighting with Bagua, are they expected to be walking in a circle, using lateral movement like that, cross-stepping around their opponent,
I've heard so many people ask that and decide that when they're going to fight with Bagua, they're going to walk and start doing circle walking with their opponent. No, circle walking is a training technique. It's a training method, like doing Santi Shi is as well.
Right.
But in Xingyi Quan, it's called Zhanzhuang. So that would be standing post. And in Bagua, walking the circle is called huozhuang, or moving, or post standing. So the circle walking is actually a training method. It's not how you approach combat, right? It's like doing push-ups. Boxers doing push-ups, they don't get onto all fours and do push-ups in a fight. So if you look at the progression of Bagua's training, and I'll speak more specifically about Liang style, which is the style that I do. We start off with Ding Shi Bajang, which are the 8 static palms but the palms are static. You're walking in a circle. You're still doing Tangni Bu. So you're practicing footwork in a circle while doing what we do in Santi Sho with the upper body, but there's 8 different postures, trying to develop the correct structure, connection, angling, etc. with the upper body. So that's the first thing. Then you'll start to do Lao Bajang, which is the 8 mother palms, which are slightly more involved. They're constantly, but they're also done in a circle. But as you progress through the system, you start to eventually learn what we call Liu Shi Si Shou, which is the 64 hands of Liu De Quan and their straight line. And Liu De Quan created this because what he was trying to do was take the essence of the the essence of the Lian Huan Zhang content and the other empty hand content, put it into straight line for direct combat use. So what we consider the 64 hands is the application of Bagua, and it's done in straight lines. So people that say you have to walk in a circle or you should be walking in a circle to fight, they're wrong. Like I said earlier, we do these things to develop skills. So the lively footwork, the ability to turn and angle, that's what the circle walking is teaching you. You're just supposed to use those skills as needed in combat. There's no set way that you should be. And I would say that if you start off walking in a circle, you'll probably get into a hell of a lot of trouble with your opponent. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you walk right into a hook or a kick.
Well, everything.
Yeah.
You know?
Do you think it helps develop lateral movement while teaching that kind of rooting and structure, the circle walking?
Okay, so I would say the circle walking has a few key points. What we talk about, and if you look at classical writing, it says Bai Ko Bu forms the circle. So Bai Bu is toe out step and Ko Bu is toe in step. And that's exactly what it is. If you walk in a straight line with your toes going forward, that's how you walk straight. The second I start turning my toes in and out, like on one side, that straight line starts to curve. So the point of this is to learn how to use Bai Ko Bu. Ko and Bai Bu are used to also trap your opponent's feet, but also to change your angling and direction. So it's multifaceted training. A lot of the time when you use Ko Bu, it's to trap up your opponent's legs. It's not to walk around him, but also to trap up and to lock his legs, both Bai and Ko Bu, but also to angle and flank. So that's the key about Bagua, is good movement. The circle walking also has a very important point that we use Tangni, or mud wading, which is likened to just adding friction to your stepping. Okay, that's not to be used like that. That's just to develop or to add resistance to your training to strengthen your legs more than what would be done if you did natural stepping. Natural stepping would be without the friction. So circle walking, from the leg point of view, has this value, and it also gets you to be very lively, right? Good lively movement.
Right.
The upper body is another key point, though, because it's got to have a constant twist. That constant twisting, with the muscles tensed and twisted, develops your core. So that's why you do this. It's to develop core strength of twisting. And we know that a lot of high-level martial arts don't merely use the limbs to attack or to do motions with, but the core. So Bagua is trying to develop this on a circle through its circle walking, to focus on these key points. They're not there to be used as a combat method. They're there to develop combat abilities.
Okay. So me thinking it's like lateral movement is not correct.
No, that is correct. Because the footwork is being developed too.
Okay.
So like I said, you're learning how to flank and angle.
Okay.
So that's part of the training.
Okay.
But
I guess
like I said,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
A circle at first. You're not going to walk in that circle during a fight. You might take 2 steps in one direction and change direction. You know what I mean? As needed.
Right. I guess the misconception is people thinking you have to be circle walking if you're fighting with Bagua, right?
Right. Then that's wrong.
Yeah, and that's probably because of movies and whatnot. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, also because I think people are in the mindset of styles, fighting with styles. No, people fight, not styles.
Right.
You develop your fighting ability through your training method, which are usually derived from some styles, but people fight, not the styles.
Okay, so kind of, I want to know, what do you think, Byron? Can Xingyi or Bagua have a formalized sparring program? Because, like, what I mean is this, is that, like, when you see traditional karate guys spar, you can clearly see they're doing traditional karate. And even when they cross over into mixed martial arts, you can still see they're doing karate. What I don't want is people to say they're doing Taiji or Bagua or Xingyi, and when they start sparring, it looks like kickboxing or sanda, because I think that's a different thing. And one thing I noticed in karate is that when you spar, because I've been doing Shotokan for a number of years now, you have to stay within the confines of that style when you do your kumite, It is restrictive, I admit that, but it still helps maintain the integrity and flavor of the art, without getting sloppy and whatnot. So I think you see where I'm going with this. Does Xingyi or Bagua need a program like that, or other traditional Chinese kung fu styles, like a system like that, to have like authentic kung fu when they're sparring and whatnot? Or what does it need?
Okay, so sparring is needed if you want to actually bridge the gap between being able to develop the skills and being able to use them. So sparring in its multitude of forms, whether it's controlled, limited, etc., you have to do it. Xingyi goes in the following progression. We go from set techniques, we do some combination of some forms, and then we have set partner forms, and then we do have something called sanda. Now, sanda is not defined. It just means free fighting. That's actually what the term means.
Right.
Well, we call it sansho, rather, or just that literally means sparring. So I would say all martial arts should practice this if they want to be able to bridge that gap and start to be able to take form into function. Okay, that's the blanket statement I'd like to start with. The second point is those methods of sparring that you talk about in karate, they have kumite, in judo they have randori. They are pieces of a whole, which is called fighting. Okay, they're not the whole thing. So judo has its sparring practice, which is focused on certain things within judo and certain things within martial arts as a whole. It's not everything, right?
Right.
Judo, if you look at Kodokan Judo, and I would suggest you buy Jigoro Kano's book called Kodokan Judo, because he lays out the curriculum from when he wrote it way back when quite clearly. You'll see that there are forms in judo. There is striking. There's even some weapon defense. It's all within the curriculum. But their sparring or their fighting practice is focused on a specific thing. Karate is the same thing. Their kumite practice is focused on trying to create a format where you could practice specific things that are considered key points of karate training. Not everything, just key points.
Right.
So any martial art can do this. It doesn't necessarily have to become a competitive event, but you just put some boundaries up into your sparring practice and let people have at it within those confines, right? What most people don't want to admit today is that the format of MMA is yet another combat discipline within the family of combat disciplines. And if you had to put them in a table and categorize them, you could have wrestling there, you could have Taiji's Toisho there, you could have Jiu-Jitsu there, you could have Judo's Randori there, you could have Karate Kumite, you could have boxing. And they should, if you looked at them clearly, you could formalize, you could tabulate them under different categories. Striking with the hands only, boxing. Wrestling, on the wrestling side, you could have judo, you could have sumo, you could have Tuisho, you could have no-gi submission wrestling, right?
Mm-hmm.
And their variant would simply be the confines, judo, wrestling and takedown with some floor submissions in a jacket. Submission wrestling, same thing, no jacket. Sumo, just simply standing on the feet, no jacket, nothing to do on the floor, etc., 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 right? But if you go if you look up above that, the format that is more free, that overlaps with most of these, would be something that is called MMA. And that's basically what the original idea was, a format where different styles could find a place to be able to use their skills. So a Thai boxer could come in with his clinch and his kneeing and his elbowing. Knees and elbows are allowed, right? Whereas in Sanda or kickboxing, you can't really use knees and elbows. So, and I'm talking about the formalized versions of these sports. So when you're looking at a format, MMA is something that you should be able to apply at least most of your skills and abilities that you practice in your martial art in. Okay, it has become crystallized because rules will start to, like I said, will start to affect the way people practice. But in general, you should look at it like that. So with Xingyi, I would say to teachers or to people out there that if they want to bridge that gap, you don't need to have a rule set that makes everybody happy. It's within your school. It's for training purposes. Sparring is a training purpose. It's to develop something and to bridge a gap. Get some gear, put some gloves on, have some agreed upon terms that you will practice within, and go at it. If you want to go into competition, well, then you'll have to adapt to what is out there. And if you want to be more free, go into MMA if you feel that this is necessary. And you should be able to adapt and utilize your skills there. So we're talking about two different things now. You know what I mean? You're talking about how a martial arts person should develop his skills within the confines of his own school, and if he wants to go outside and actually compete. These are connected, but they're not the same thing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I get what you're saying. I think you explained it really well. So it's just a matter of kind of, do you think face has a bit to do with it too? People don't want to spar right now, and maybe a lot of the Chinese systems, because it might not look as good as when you're not sparring, or you might lose. Is that the case, you think, or could that be a part?
Well, there's a lot to it. I mean, that's such a tough thing to look at in today's context and society, because Chinese martial arts within China, Chinese martial arts outside of China, societies that they're developed in, guru culture, where people are looking up to their teacher like untouchable gurus, all of this. And it's not only Chinese martial arts that's had this problem, it's lots of martial arts that has led to the point that effective practice and combat training has been relegated to the side. People have started living in their own little bubbles. There's the whole financial side of it too, because the second you're starting to earn money out of it, that if you happen to lose face in terms of your combat ability and get shown up there, then that might threaten your income. So all of these things have to do with it. But I would say, once again, this is not something that's not unsalvageable. It's very much salvageable. Mm-hmm. So look, we do martial arts for ourselves, and it's multifaceted, right?
Right.
I kind of said this before, probably in another podcast, but classical or traditional martial arts, and this probably applies to in some degree to sport martial arts too. Most of these points that I'm going to put, there's combat ability that you're developing. There's the social aspect. I mean, a lot of people go to training because it's where they socialize, and the links and the friendships they make in training are strong. At times stronger in some cases than their family. So there's the social aspect. They go to it out of a social interaction benefit. There's cultural. So when we're talking about traditional or classical martial arts, they either have a connection to that culture or they're learning parts of that culture. And that's interesting. There's nothing wrong with that. And that also includes the weapons point of it, because weapons, I mean, half of the weapons we do in Chinese martial arts are impractical in today's day and age, but why should we throw them away? There's a cultural legacy there. And it's interesting and it's fun, and that doesn't mean that we should do them without the requirements they were intended for the correct way. Blanket statement right here that people need to pay attention to. Simply because you're not going to use a broadsword, it doesn't mean you can do whatever the hell you want to with a broadsword. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is people practice those things because there's a cultural element to it. They should still practice them correctly. Now I've gone off on a tangent, but that's the other thing. There's a spiritual side to it. All martial arts, and then say any sport done to a level where you connect your mind, body, and your soul to it at a deep and full level, has a spiritual side to it. It could even be basketball or running. So it's not just martial arts. There's a development of spirit, perseverance, tenacity, putting yourself through hell. That is all good for your spirit and your character. So there's that side of it too. So and then of course finally entertainment. You do it because you're just having fun. You're enjoying it. So we can't lose sight of all of these things, but we should also not lose sight of any one of them and realize that there's a way to do it as a whole, remembering the key tenets of what we're doing. They are martial arts. Practice them correctly. Whether you want to fight or not is a different story, but you should practice correctly and practice it as a whole, right? So that I would say is a really important point in today's society.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people confuse the fact, like, sparring doesn't always mean you want to compete, you know? You could just spar because I think it's necessary, it's very important, but it doesn't mean you have to be a competitor, you know?
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Different strokes for different folks, different levels for different people. But I would say that they should be willing to at least engage in some form of non-cooperative training to bridge the gap between form and function.
Right.
And if you're doing martial arts and you never want to make contact with another person, you might just want to step back and ask yourself why you're doing it in the first place, and are your motives true to yourself, or maybe you slightly confused. So It doesn't mean you have to go out and compete. It doesn't mean you have to go full out and beat the shit out of your opponents or your classmates. It just means that you shouldn't be avoiding it in totality.
Right. Okay. So do you, obviously, I mean, judging from our conversation, you probably have some form of sparring you partake in Xingyi and Bagua, right, Byron?
Yeah. I mean, we've got headgear, we've got gloves, and sometimes my martial brothers and I will just put them on and have fun, you know. It is fun. And we do it with weapons too, by the way. We have sparring weapons too that we, depending on the season, because season has a lot of influence on what you practice. We practice outside. Depending on the season, we'll do different things at different times.
Right. Okay. When you're sparring, do you try to use your Xingyi and Bagua, like try to apply the techniques you've learned and whatnot, or just do you take? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
That is.
So what I would suggest to people as a method of starting this, and this is something that I still do today, arrange with whoever, whether it's one of your martial brothers or if it's in your class, to get together and do this in a very, relaxed environment. Use some gear because it's safer that way, especially in the beginning stages. And what I personally do is, at different times, I will focus on specific things. Like today, I will try to focus on using horse tactics and methods, you know, and that's what I'll try to look for and use the whole time. Other times I won't, but it's good to have different focus on different days, and you can find yourself and see different things and develop them. We should use it as another training tool, if you know what I mean.
Right. Like, let's say you're sparring someone in Xingyi and like your partner starts throwing spinning hook kicks and stuff like that. Is that something you're okay with, or like?
Oh, he can do whatever he wants to.
Okay.
It's up to him.
Okay.
I can only speak for myself, you know what I mean?
Right. Okay. Does Xingyi and Bagua have those high spinning kicks like you see the Wushu performers do, or is that just Wushu, sport Wushu stuff?
Xingyi has far fewer leg techniques, so and they're limited to, in terms of in general, limited to being used waist height and below. Very rarely does it kick higher. There's probably only 3 or 4 kicks, but there's a lot of stomping on the feet, actually, which people don't see often, but stomping on the knee and stomping on the feet. But Bagua has 1 or 2 higher kicks. But once again, it's very rare that they kick over the waist extensively. A lot of the footwork is trapping, kicking, sweeping from the waist below.
Okay.
So not what you see. And there's basically none of those jumping kicks. So, I mean, Xingyi might have one of our stomping kicks might be combined with a jump, or a tantue, like a spring kick to the groin might be combined with a hop, like in monkey and other things, but not crazy jumping, kicking over the head, things like that. No, not really.
No jump spinning hook kicks or jump 360 round kicks, something like that, right?
No, the style that features the most intricate and extensive legs of the use of the legs in the north would probably be Chojiao. And my teacher did do Chojiao under Wu Binlo for a period of time that he just wanted to expand on his kicking repertoire. So, but yeah, there's a lot of, but it's a lot of practical based methods of kicking, not so much flying. There are higher kicks, but not so much flying, if you know what I mean.
Right. Because I know like the axe kicks, spinning hook kicks, and the high various roundhouse kicks and stuff like that is very much a Korean like Taekwondo and karate thing. Do any Kung Fu styles have a large emphasis on those? Like the style you just mentioned, does it emphasize it as much as Taekwondo and karate do, or that's not really...
as much? But I don't know if you know that even in karate, like the higher round kick wasn't really there in Okinawan karate.
Yeah, it's very much a Japanese karate type thing.
Yeah, and who knows if it came from seeing Thai methods, because that is a staple of Thai methods, is the high roundhouse kick.
Yeah, so, I wondered that as well. And I think maybe even a lot of Americans and Westerners that started doing karate started kicking higher. I wonder if that had an influence as well. I think Bill Superfoot Wallace was talking about that. He just started kicking high, and he said not many people were. So
right.
That's interesting. Okay.
And it's good. Like any skill, if you're able to use it and train it in a logical way, it's useful. It's good. And the Thais, for example, were, well, I mean, the Thai roundhouse kick is renowned for a very long time. It's not something new.
Right. Okay, so I've asked other guests this. I want to get your take on it. Why hasn't traditional Kung Fu made an impact in mixed martial arts yet? We see karate, not a lot, and it took a while before we start seeing karate. But we do see it, and I think the only reason we do is because they have some kind of kumite point fighting program, format. Yeah. And it did give guys like Machida, Stephen Thompson, Justin Scoggins. There's a few of them really unique stance and movement. Why isn't Kung Fu taking that next step?
So I would say that you've kind of already answered that question, and that's because karate already has a well-developed competitive format. So the competitive format exists already for quite a while within karate, and people had that avenue to go and start competing. So not just training. So I'm not just saying doing sparring training in your school, but to actually start doing competition. So competition against other schools and competition against other countries, maybe even.
Right.
That would be step one. So that opens up that doorway to then going bigger and bigger. And the next logical step would go to MMA. I mean, fame, prestige, variety, if you want to test yourself, etc. That's a route that a lot of people will go. Chinese martial arts hasn't really got much of a competitive format apart from Sanda. Sanda is not as old or as well developed as Kumite. When I say well developed, I mean widespread, not in terms of its style itself. And but we are seeing a lot more come out. I don't know if you've noticed. There's quite a few guys from Dagestan that have entered into the UFC, and they've started doing they're Sanda fighters. Now, okay, we could have a whole debate about is Sanda Chinese Kung Fu on its own, but the point is that is the competitive format. So like I said about karate's competitive format, logically and naturally producing people that will go into MMA, Sanda would be that avenue in Chinese martial arts, because that is the competitive format that exists. Once again, very small and not as widely developed, but it's there. So now we're seeing a lot of guys come out of Sanda and go into the UFC even. There's a very famous Russian fighter. His name is Muslim Salikhov, who's our Sanda king for many years. He's in fact the only non-Chinese Sanda king. He came into China and beat all of their champions in their weight divisions in one night. So it was a cross-weight division. So he's a multiple time world Sanda champion, and he's known in the sport as the best that there ever was so far in Sanda, and he's in the UFC now. I mean, he's just had a couple of fights.
Yeah, he's amazing. I know exactly who that is, and I know of the Dagestani fighters too that come from a Sanda background. But again, I don't mean to be combative or argumentative, but I would kind of be letting you off the hook if I didn't press you a little bit, if you don't mind.
No, go ahead.
But to most people, we would not consider that traditional Kung Fu, and we can get into the argument about what it is, what is not, but if we're just being simple and direct, no BS, if I'm putting a gun to your head, why isn't there Xingyi, Bagua, Taiji, where it's obvious it's those arts? Like we can see, again, I hate to always compare, we can see that Machida's doing Shotokan, we can see that Stephen Thompson's doing American Kempo karate. We can see Michael Venom Page is doing something like Stephen Thompson, that westernized version of point fighting karate. Why not Kung Fu?
Well, exactly. I mean, part of the problem was, one, there's no competitive avenue, but the other problem is within the Chinese martial arts themselves, and we've kind of discussed it, that a lot of them actually don't do any combat training. A lot of them have thrown that away. A lot of them are focused on other parts of training. A lot of them are not competent teachers, and that's also why there's no combat training. So there's, within a lot of the styles themselves, there's not much, well, I'd hate to say it, skill, and two, they don't actually do any combat training. So that's unfortunately the unfortunate truth that we're going to have to admit that is a problem. And not to say that everyone has that problem, but it is a major problem within Chinese martial arts.
Right. It's because when you look at Kung Fu styles, it looks like it should be effective, Yeah. Like you look at Wing Chun, in theory, you would think that'd be very effective, but it fails miserably. Like every time you've seen it, almost not every time, but mostly when you see it fight anyone,
Right.
But it's like you can see people use aspects of Wing Chun all the time,
Well, that's it.
But they're doing it unconsciously, they don't have any formal training. There's a few, Tony Ferguson, you know who Tony Ferguson is, right?
Yeah.
He's trained, it seems like he's trained a lot in Wing Chun, and he's used it very effectively.
Yes.
Yeah. But outside of that, like, there's not really much of it. So it's just what you said, there's just like that disconnect with that formal kind of sparring program, and that's basically all that it is,
Well, that's part of it, but there's also a sad reality within not just all martial arts, but it's a big problem within Chinese martial arts that they've stigmatized anything to do with competitive fighting. Like a lot of the teachers seem to be threatened by it, that they have to sit and stigmatize it and talk bad about it. Oh, this is not good for don't compete, it's bad for your martial arts, or MMA, it's the wrong thing and it's not real, and don't even think about it. So there's a stigma for people not even wanting to get that first step into it also. And that's part of the problem too. And what you said too is really important. We're not going to be able to use 110% of our methods as is verbatim within these competitive formats, but you'll have to take certain aspects and use those as they fit into that format, right?
Right.
And that can be done, but I don't see many people doing that. Like you said, Tony Ferguson has done it. People can do it. And it's the same with Machida. He's taken aspects of his karate background and implemented them into MMA. And we'd be lying to ourselves if we said that he didn't also start learning grappling because that's an aspect that was underdeveloped in his style.
Right.
Again, I'm not saying that it's better or worse. I'm saying that's the reality of an open format competitive martial art event, that the reality is people are going to grapple with you. Wrestlers are going to grab you and slam you into the floor. And if you are very much lacking over there, you're going to lose. So the martial artist is the logical person who works on his weaknesses. Right?
Right. So, I mean, even strikers, anyone's going to grapple with you. That's just, you hit someone, they get upset, people just grapple. It's like, you almost have to fight against your natural instinct to not grapple when you think about it. So
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Even animals grapple.
Exactly.
Even animals grapple.
It's in the Bible, grappling. So it's the oldest form, probably, I would say. Now, Toisho, or push hands, okay?
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about that.
Can I take a 1 minute bathroom break?
Go for it.
All right. I'll be back in a minute.
Okay.
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Welcome back. Okay. So,
sorry about that. Drank a lot of water this morning.
No. Please. And if you ever, you got to go, just you could text me through WeChat and tell me when the clock's ticking. Okay.
All right. No problem.
Okay. So Toisho, push hands.
Yeah.
I could theoretically see the benefit of it. Sensitivity drills, control, rooting, right? Why? Maybe because I'm ignorant. I don't know enough about internal martial arts to see that. Maybe I'm missing something. Like a lot of people could look at jiu-jitsu and they don't know what the hell they're looking at, right? And they complain about it.
Right.
We've heard that, and that's irritating for anyone that's knows anything about grappling. That the level of skill in BJJ and judo is insane. Catch wrestling, all that.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah.
Am I looking at it and not thinking it looks like, to me it looks like bad judo? And I talked to Ken Gullett about this. I want to talk to you about it. When I look at Toisho, I look at the competitions. To me, it looks like really bad judo, and they're using a lot of strength and they're trying to be explosive. To me, it doesn't resemble anything like the Xingyi or Taiji push hands at all. The Toisho competitions.
Right.
Am I seeing it wrong, or is it just kind of evolved that way? Like it's lost its traditional way. What's going on here?
Okay, so let's first just clarify. You're talking about when you talk about Toisho, you've seen the moving step kind of competitive Toisho, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is one of the things. Like Toisho as a traditional practice was a training tool, and it's probably a beginning level training tool. Mm-hmm. So to start understanding, if we look at it on the big picture, there's two types, in traditional practices. There's set Toisho techniques, which are kind of cooperative. Everybody knows what's going on. And then you'd probably say that there would be some free version of that too. The set ones you could see is starting to teach you entries, sensitivity, as you said, but it's hand fighting in reality. Mm-hmm. So it's the initial part of almost any grappling / wrestling / I would say even any combat sport that goes directly to the clinch phase.
Right.
It's the hand fighting, right?
Right.
They do grip fighting in judo because they've got jackets on, depending on the rules, etc. So at a fundamental level, that's what it was teaching you, hand fighting and entries, and then from a later stage, how to finish from there with a takedown or some sort of a finishing technique. The problem is when it became a sport is that or a competitive event, is that you have to have a set of rules, and whatever's going to happen within that set of rules is going to happen. And I would agree with you in that judo is, and even no-gi submission wrestling when they start on the feet is superior. It is, unfortunately. We have to just admit what it is. But if you take Toisho as a training tool out of the competitive format, it has its benefits. So that's the thing. And what did happen, and you're right, is that a lot of guys ended up just trying to muscle the way through it. But isn't that what combat's about? I mean, that's the thing, though. You're going to have people that are going to muscle their way through. And if you can't do anything about it, you are going to lose. This is the sad reality that people need to realize. There's a Chinese saying, 百条百能无理不行. That means you can have 100 techniques, 100 abilities, or 100 skills and tricks, and 100 abilities. But without strength, it's all fruitless. It's all worthless. So that is the nature of combat. You've got two sides of one coin. You've got skill on the one side, and you've got power on the other side. You need both. Mm-hmm. A guy with high power and low skill might beat a guy with low power and high skill, or he might lose to it. But a guy with high power and high skill has a really good chance at beating most people. That's just the reality of it. And it's funny because they started trying to, the Chinese Wushu Association here in China started trying to make a formal Taiji Tuisho competition in the last few years, and they called me to come and watch one of their national events in Tianjin. I think it was 4 years ago. And they've even got a special platform and rules and judges, and they were just trying to develop it there. And as I was watching, they started off, and the two athletes, or the two competitors rather, had to start off by doing a set partner form. Now listen to what I've just said. It's a combat event, and what they had them do was get up on stage and basically do a Tuisho dance that they both have. It's a set one that everyone does, that they've, it's choreographed, and they go through it. And I was looking at this, and I asked the guy, what's this for? Are they getting scored on this? And he said, yes. I said, why are they getting scored on this? It's a combat event. He said, to see if their skill is good. I said, if their skill is good, they'll win the fight.
Yeah, it's so confusing.
And the guy said, I said, why are you making people do this? Just let them fight. And he looked at me, he's like, that's to make sure that we don't get judo people coming in here and beating everyone. And I looked at him, I said, if judo is beating you, there's something wrong with your taiji.
Right.
And they quickly change. These are unfortunate, this is unfortunately my character, but it's the unfortunate questions that they're not used to, and they usually don't get asked. But this is the mentality, unfortunately. So people, like I said earlier, need to understand combat is combat. All you can do is put in confines and restrictions. And from there, it's no longer I don't want to say it's Tai Chi, because the person there is just a person fighting. He's just fighting within those confines of the rules. That's it. So, fucking A, let judo people come in. Maybe you can learn something from them. And maybe they can learn something from you too. So, that's how it should be. But I think, and this is again coming back to one of your earlier questions, combat sports have developed over the last, I would say, 30 years to such a large degree that we're starting to see, like you've just seen, overlaps between them. And we're starting to realize, okay, you've got something called martial arts. When they're applied, it's just martial arts. Mm-hmm. When you've looked at good high-level judo and you look at poor tuisho, you're like, okay, well, judo is superior. Well, you're seeing an overlap there. That's what you're seeing, right? Right. When you're looking at high-level kickboxing compared to poor Muay Thai or vice versa, you're going to say, well, this one's better than that one. But you're seeing overlaps there. And what happened 30 years ago was this thing called the UFC started, which really is an old idea, but it's born again, in which we say, all of you people can overlap here. That's it. So I think there isn't going to be some new format that's going to come out and revolutionize everything in terms, because the UFC, as far as it is restricted in its own rules, is the most open out of all these combat. The only thing that could be more open would be illegal underground bare knuckle no holds barred fights. That's never going to become mainstream. Right. It's probably the closest thing to a real fight, but it's never going to become mainstream. It's not going to be something I would suggest people to go and voluntarily put themselves through all the time either. So, well, you got to work with what you got. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is the push hands in Xingyi trend similar to the push hands in other internal arts?
There's no push hands in Xingyi trend, and people that have put it there have added it themselves. Okay. Xingyi's not a push. pushing or a grappling art. It's a striking art.
Okay, so when I did that, that was just whatever lineage I was in, added that in, and that's not.
Yeah, and it's probably a sensitivity drill, but it's not in line with Xingyi's methods.
Okay. What about Bagua?
Bagua, we don't have a pushing. Pushing hands is a tuisho, is a tai chi practice, and Bagua too is depending on which, because like I said, you've got Yin style Bagua, you've got Cheng style Bagua, you've got mine, which is Liang, which is a combination of Cheng style and Yin style. Yin style focuses on its own tactics and methods and content, which is slightly different to Cheng style, which focuses more on throwing and takedowns. Liang style combines them both, so you're not going to find one training method that will fit for all of these methods. We have partner training exercises, which we call Dan Cao Ba Shi or Shuang Cao Ba Shi, which you do with a partner, which are 8 practices which focus on differing things, including striking, grip breaking, and takedowns, joint locking, etc. We've got partner Nafa, which is China training drills, etc. But we don't really have something called tuisho. So no, it doesn't really exist in Bagua either. Because tuisho is more in line with Xingyi Taiji's methods and combat approaches.
Okay.
Not really, yeah.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, do you still encounter this, Byron? I lived in China 7 years.
Okay.
And when I was there, I encountered it a few times. And I kind of just chalk it up to ignorance. You know, when people don't know, they don't know. And that people say stuff out of ignorance all the time. I've said stuff out of ignorance in this conversation with you about push hands and Xingyi Chuan. The whole too deadly for MMA thing. I hear that a lot in the kung fu community. I heard it when I was in China from kung fu people. Is that still an issue? I mean, I've only been gone for 2 years, so it probably is still a thing. But shockingly, it's a thing over here in America, and America is where the whole MMA boom started. You know?
Yeah.
So it's weird. Do you still deal with that when communicating with your kung fu brothers?
Like my direct brothers, not so much, but I've had. It is a very common idea here. And I would say that even some of my Liang Bagua family uncles, I've heard 1 or 2 of them say the same thing, especially when that whole Shu Xiaodong thing came out. Like, I'm going to stick my finger in your eye. I can't do that in MMA. I'm going to hit you in the groin, and it's too deadly. Our techniques are for killing. And I'm like, okay, but at a basic level, if you're able to poke somebody in the eye with your finger, you're able to punch him in the face. I mean, if you're able to kick him in the groin, you're able to kick him somewhere else too. If you're able to stop his takedown and apply some break, you're able to do that in any situation. For example, in a challenge match or a sporting combat realm. That's why MMA is pretty open. I mean, there's some restrictions, but if your go-to is to say that I'm going to use a killing technique like poking in your, what if the poke in the eye doesn't work? Are you telling me that's all that there is in Bagua or Xingyi? There's a poke to the eye and a kick to the groin? Is that all? All these techniques, all these methods, and you're going to sit and chalk it up to, I'm going to poke you in the eye. That is just, unfortunately, it's dishonest. That's just dishonest. That's, if you can, like I said, if you can strike the guy in the eye, you can punch him in the face. You should be able to work well in the free movement phase of combat, in the clinch phase of combat, etc. So what's going wrong now? I mean, that's just excuses. That's all.
Right. I mean, one thing I think Boss Rutan talked about at one time too, and the very few altercations I've had in life and people I've talked to that have had them, the level of violence you bring it to, like if you start grabbing someone by the hair or the groin or biting and scratching, they're going to do the exact same thing back to you, especially if you're close enough to do something like that. You know, it's not like if I come up to you and like I try to grab you and twist your groin, you can do the exact same thing to me up that close. You know, it's not like. The other thing is that if you can't beat someone with rules, what makes you think you could beat them without rules?
Yeah, well, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, that's my biggest thing right there.
Well, at a fundamental level, combat is about position, timing, angling, these are the fundamental aspects that are in all martial arts combat. Doesn't matter what style.
Right.
So at a fundamental level, if you can't use position, timing, these movement, what makes you think you're going to be able to use your deadly techniques?
Right.
So,
I mean, have you heard people say ridiculous stuff like killing blows from an iron palm or anything like that? Have you encountered that? I have, oddly, met people that say.
Really, I mean, a lot less than before now, I would say. But yeah, I've heard it in the past, but no, I mean, iron palm, I mean, okay, I do conditioning. That's just called conditioning. I don't expect it to kill people. It's just going to make my bones harder, and they are. They're harder than most people. That's it.
Right.
That's for attack. That's for attack and defense. I remember one of my first fights that I ever got into as a kid. Like I'd been doing martial arts, and the only thing I remember after the fight was how painful my shins and my feet were. They were in so much pain because they had smacked up against this other person's bones that made contact. Not intentionally. Here's the other thing that people don't realize. Unintentionally, I had slammed my shins and my toes and bones into his bones and corners of his bones that I was limping for 2 weeks. Okay? Wow. And that's when I realized, this conditioning thing is not about killing your opponent. It's about not getting destroyed yourself, And it's important. Anytime you're hitting somebody, you're taking force back. And the quick reminder here is that fighting is not just about hitting your opponent. You get hit too. Right.
Does Xingyi focus on a lot of iron shirt, iron body conditioning, stuff like that?
Well, it used to. I would say it's a lot less now, but conditioning was something that was staple for most martial artists a long time ago, especially Xingyi and Bagua people. There was a lot of conditioning being done anyway. So forearm bashing, shin bashing, tapping, hitting things, it was pretty common.
Right. Yeah. Have you ever seen that style called Wushu trend?
Yeah, Five Ancestors.
Yeah. Have you seen the one of the old man striking the corner of a stone pillar?
Yeah. And that's how it used to be. And it's quite more prevalent in the southern styles. Okay. But
originally Xingyi, Bagua, and all the other ones probably did similar stuff as well, would you say?
Yeah, they all had varying degrees of different types of conditioning.
Okay. You mentioned Shu Xiaodong. So why not let's go down that road if you don't mind.
Sure.
I don't have an issue with the guy. It's not a big deal. I was not, to me it was no big deal when I first saw it. I was not shocked at all. I was shocked that it blew up. That's what shocked me. Why did it blow up when guys like you and me already knew? We've seen stuff like this a million times. We already knew what was going to happen. Why did it blow up this time? How did that happen?
So there's a few really important background things that people just don't know unless they were here and unless they've lived here, unless they understand what's going on here. Mm-hmm. I would say in the last 6 years, the nationalism, the level of nationalism here has been amplified by 1,000%.
Oh, I remember the protests against Japan during the Senkaku Island.
Okay, yeah, exactly.
I remember.
So that's part of it, and also the rhetoric is about greatness of the Chinese people, greatness of the Chinese culture, greatness of the Chinese history, superiority is all connected to all of that, etc. So now you've suddenly got this guy who's ostensibly representing a Western idea, beating up something that's ostensibly the greatest, most revered Chinese martial arts system with thousands of years of history and blah, blah, blah. And not only beating him, but beating him in a handful of seconds, in a very, very clear way, not as if it was he almost lost. No, it was just hands down annihilation. So that was part of the reason it blew up. I mean, I was in Shu Xiaodong's gym, and maybe you've heard before, I was in his gym maybe the day before he went down to fight Lele, and it wasn't even made a big thing about it. There was nothing about it. There was no big media. It was just Shu Xiaodong being Shu Xiaodong. He had a channel. He had a online platform presence where he would chat room and discussions, and people would talk about MMA, and he'd talk whatever he wants to. And Lele had actually come in there before, and this is what people don't know. And never mind the TV show that he had been put on TV, being revered as the
gosh, I remember that.
So you see, people don't know that because this is So a lot of people are like, oh, he's not even a master of Tai Chi. Excuse me. Whatever you understand about him being a master or not, the point was that he was deliberately portrayed like that for, I'd hate to say it, nationalistic reasons, on TV with fraudulent and faked activities and abilities being presented.
Remember the bird thing? Was done. Remember the bird thing, Byron?
Yeah.
Oh.
And the watermelon thing.
Oh, no.
And, of course, the token white guy who's a Thai boxing champion who beats a Thai boxer in the beginning of the show to show you that he's really good because he could beat a Thai boxer. And then Lele defeating him like it's a joke, right?
Right.
All staged, all set up with a direct underlying message. So people can't catch the message. So anyway, but Lele comes into the group with a video of his student talking a whole lot of shit with like a skeleton, trying to show the mechanics of a bone and showing how he can come out of a locked up rear naked choke with one hand. That's what
he pushed up on the guy's elbow, right, when he was sitting down?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
So Shisharon said, really, please try that with me. And that's how it started.
Mm-hmm.
Now, who's to blame here? I mean, we could all sit and say, oh, let's just keep quiet and mind our own business. But I think at this point in time, the audacity and the level of which it's not just some guy like Lele presenting himself, but it's an endeavor to present him as something he isn't. Sometimes they need to be called out. And that's what he did. And I was in Shisharong's gym. My jiu-jitsu teacher was actually teaching a couple of days a week in his gym to his guys. He was teaching them grappling. So I was in the gym quite often before that. And I know Shisharong, but he's a nice guy. He's okay. He speaks very directly. He's a Beijing guy who's was a combat athlete, so he's got a dirty mouth. So what? For me, some of the most honest people I've met are the people with the foulest language. So what?
My wife.
And you know, there you go.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's just how it is. I'm not really interested in his vocabulary, and I asked him, I heard that he was going to go down and fight this guy, and it was nothing big. You know, he's like, yeah, this guy, I'm going to go down tomorrow. And then the day after, he was back, and he was back in the gym like nothing had happened. He didn't expect anything. And just a few days later, it just exploded, right? So he didn't plan it. It just happened, and he got seriously attacked because of it. So
I felt bad.
Yeah, it was.
I did. He's kind of suffering now in China, if I'm not mistaken. His social credit score, because they have like that Orwellian social credit thing going on in China right now. You know, so. Yep.
Yeah, he did. So he still is, but he's still Shushadong. He's still himself. He's still carrying on doing what he's doing, as best as he can. He just fought in Lumpini on the weekend. I don't know if you know that.
Oh no, I didn't know.
In Thailand.
Wow, that's incredible.
Well, he fought against also a retired kind of MMA/karate guy from Japan. And it was a very quick affair. I think they fought the first round with other rules and the second and third round with full MMA rules. And Shisharon just took him down, ground and pounded him. And that was the end of that. Look, I don't know why he's fighting these guys and what the point is like of that match anymore. Mm-hmm. But, you know, he's doing his thing. So that's what's going on. But yeah, I would back to your question, why it became what it became, and it was connected to what I mentioned earlier.
Okay.
And they've got this agenda now here with soft power and using Chinese culture, specifically Tai Chi and Chinese martial arts, as a soft power thing internationally. So this guy came out and literally just in one move destroyed the reputation of Chinese so-called Tai Chi. So the backlash was huge.
Mm-hmm. But guys like you and me, someone in the know, I guess, knew that's what was going to happen. It was apparent from the outset. So
well, you know what I was thinking as soon as that fight ended and people were the blowout started happening. I'm like, well, welcome to UFC 1, China. I mean, come on, we've answered. had this question asked and answered a long time ago. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Especially UFC 2. I don't know if you remember the costumes half the guys were wearing in UFC 2. It was insane.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, interesting.
Fighters are still fighting Xu Xiaodong. I don't know where they're getting these guys from. Why are they still doing this? I mean...
I'll give you a bit of insight on that, too. I mean, guys, after the whole thing blew up, were just randomly arriving at his gym. And this is half the time people don't actually see it. They were just randomly arriving at his gym demanding a match. And he was very, very much always trying to talk them down. Especially looking at them, knowing that they have not a chance in hell. He'd be like, "Are you sure you want to do this? I mean, let's just leave it. Okay, how about you fight with one of my instructors first and see how you fare against him. We'll use whatever rules you want." But a lot of the guys were very, very aggressive, or just outright being, disturbing everything there. And Xu Xiaodong would handle them. He would handle them, or he'd get one of his instructors to show them what day of the week it is, and then they'd leave anyway. But that was more common than people actually know. That was very common. The official big fights are the same thing, just people that are coming in and trying to make it bigger. So public challenging, or there's some famous guy trying to arrange a big match, and you saw the result of all of them. I mean, it's always the same result so far, because it's not to say that they're representatives of good Chinese martial arts, no, but they are representatives of the bad parts of Chinese martial arts, which are far too common. So that's just what it is.
Yeah, you have to be delusional if you think you're going to go in and be a semi-professional mixed martial artist. If you're not,
well, exactly,
semi-professional athlete in one way in combat sports, you know what I mean? Like, it's
well, that's exactly it. That's exactly it.
You can't compare a hobbyist to a professional athlete, even if they're a journeyman level or a C-level athlete. They're still an athlete. It's just there's a level there. I think a lot of people in traditional martial arts, of all styles of traditional martial arts, are kind of, they can't really accept that. I can't use all my deadly techniques, so that's why this guy, no, he wins because he's a better athlete and he's more experienced in combat. That's just it.
Oh yeah, there's two different levels. And I mean, I filmed a documentary in Guangfu, which is Yang Luchan's hometown, and they called me for a documentary, and they did a long, one-on-one interview with me, of which almost none got put into the final documentary at the end. I mean, the rest of everything that I did there was, that was in the documentary. But the one-on-one discussion that they had, and one of the discussions was about this issue, it never found its way in the documentary. I got my hands on the footage and I put subtitles on. It's on my YouTube channel. And I mentioned the same thing. You're talking about a standard different at its fundamental level between a hobbyist and a professional. Never mind Xu Xiaodong, but in general, combat athletes in general, they're training full-time like pros. Don't expect a hobbyist to be on the same, just on that level. It's completely different. And it's the same thing like saying a Formula One car, and it's a specialized combat, like a Formula One car and a day-to-day car,
Right.
A Formula One car is going to destroy you in that environment. But I don't want to drive a Formula One car down the road to buy milk. It's just not practical. So you got to look at these different things for what they are, and not try to compare them as, the one is the other one and this one is better than that one. No, they've both got their ups and downs, pluses and minuses. But let's understand what we're comparing here at a basic level. A professional combat athlete and a hobbyist. It's just not. You're asking already you're already on a handicap right there.
Right. There is, outside of a lucky shot, I mean, I don't believe in luck, but you know what I'm trying to say. Outside of a fluke strike landing, it's And Xu Xiaodong is not even a good MMA fighter. You know what I mean? If we're being totally honest.
Not at all.
No, he wouldn't be anywhere. I mean, he's not even king of the cage level. You get what I'm saying? And that also kind of speaks to the gap when it comes to a traditional martial arts hobbyist and an MMA practitioner of some sort.
Correct.
Yeah. Correct. I think a lot of people, I was reading stuff about Xu Xiaodong being a former champion. Like, what are these people talking about? He's not, compared to me, he's awesome, but compared to he's not a good fighter. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yep. So does he know that you do Xingyi and Bagua? Does he say anything to you about it? You guys ever talk about it?
Well, he knows, but I haven't. I mean, my jiu-jitsu coach left his gym a long time ago, and Xu Xiaodong's gym got closed down by the government and moved. And I haven't really seen him since. I mean, there's no point for me to just go, and it's pretty far away from where I am now. But I have wanted to actually set up a time to go and just have a discussion with him, an interview with him, and I'll see if I can still get around to doing that, and if he's willing to do it. So, but no, I haven't really seen him for, more than a year probably. So, yeah.
If you could do that, that'd be awesome, Byron. Have a drink with them. If you could put subtitles up as well. You know?
Well, that's what I have to do with him. And it's the same. I did this interview with Zhang Weili, and it'll be an interesting one because it's a totally different focus from the usual interviews that people are doing with her now. It has to be video with subtitles, otherwise no one understands what's being. I can't do a podcast version of it.
Right. Yeah, I can speak Chinese, but still, even sometimes I would like to have subtitles. Just it's easier for me, you know.
Sure.
Speaking of your Chinese, how long did it take you to learn it? You know, and do you think you need to know Chinese to be able to train properly with a kung fu teacher in China?
Well, with my teacher, you do because he doesn't speak English. So
okay.
That's the one thing. But I think the other side of it, if you really want to go deeper into the traditional arts, you should understand the language. So you can read the text, you can understand the context of the language used, the cultural connotations, it's all connected. So to go deeper into it, I would say it's pretty important, but it's not, for example, if I had to teach somebody, I could be that link, if you know what I mean. So if you have a teacher who's proficient, he'll be able to introduce those things in your own language anyway. So, but for a cultural activity, if you want to go deeper into the culture, yeah, you should learn the language. So I started learning Chinese because I went to a Chinese high school, actually. It was a high school that was run by, at that time, the Taiwanese government. And China, it was a Chinese school, and we had Chinese language lessons. But honestly speaking, my Chinese really picked up when I came to China the first time. Something just clicked because I was learning it overseas, but had no incentive to use it on a daily basis. So when I got thrown into the environment here, just a couple of weeks in, something just went click, and I was like, it just all started coming out. I can't explain it, actually. But yeah.
And for those that don't know, you've lived all over the world, basically, right? East, west.
Yeah, I've lived in most continents. I was born in South Africa. I've lived in Brazil. I've lived in the USA. I've lived in Europe, in Cyprus. I've lived in China now, in Asia. So, yeah.
And how much longer do you plan on staying in China? Do you have a plan yet, or are you still just enjoying your training with your master? Is that what's going on right now?
Well, honestly, I don't know how much longer. I don't plan these things, but my teacher is getting old now, and that's why I came and decided to be here 10 years ago, just so I could be closer to him before he gets too old. So, and he's going to be spending more. His daughter lives in Australia, so he's formally going to be.
Really thing?
Yeah, so getting older, he's got my Shifu and Shimu, they've got one child. She's in Australia. It doesn't make sense for them to be so far away in their older age from their child. So I think they're going to be, the reality is even this year, he was there for about 6 months. He's just back now, but he's only been back for a couple of months, and I think he's going to go back. So he's not going to be here much more, if you know what I mean. He'll be there most of the time, if not all the time. So this is what'll push me into my next phase of what I'm going to do and where I'm going to go. But as it is at the moment, I haven't got a plan to leave immediately. I'll see how things pan out, but yeah. I was here for him. That's the key point that I'm trying to make here.
Right. And you probably could have lived in other places. If your parents were able to travel so much, you probably had your pick of where to live. You kind of made the choice to be close to him. I really respect that. That's awesome.
Well, I have a European citizenship, so I could live anywhere in Europe too. But yeah, the key was to spend important years very close to him. That was what I wanted to do. So yeah.
Do you two ever have like deep discussions about martial arts and the depth, the philosophy behind different things, or how to use this against that? Do you guys ever have conversations like that?
Yeah, to a degree. I mean, it's always varying topics and varying things. But yeah, I mean, I've had very deep discussions with him. And, I must say one thing, though, even from when I first started training with him to when I moved here and watched him age and grow old, even his perspective on things has shifted slightly. And that has to do with where you are and what stage of your life you're in and your physicality and all of that. It's all affected. So I remember when I first started training with him, what a hard man he was, and he's kind of softened up in the last year or so to a degree. But that's just expected, right? I mean, he's over 70, so what do you expect?
Mm-hmm. And your wife was a martial artist and a Wushu athlete too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, she was.
Okay, and does she still train with you? Does she still do martial arts?
She does. She still practices some of her own stuff, but not as seriously. But she doesn't do anything that I do. I mean, we do completely different things. She doesn't do Xingyi or Bagua at all. So, okay. No.
Is she still involved in Wushu in China?
No, not at all. Not at all. China's pretty interesting because if you go from an athlete and you stay in the system to an athlete, you'll probably then be posted as a coach, and then you'll just carry on from there. But if you break that, and she lived overseas in South Africa for about 10 years. If you break that, then you're not going to just come back into that system. They usually work within a closed system.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Well, Byron, it's been over 2 hours. I apologize about that. I could talk to you all day, but I realize you have a life, and you need to start your day.
No problem. It's been good. It's been a good discussion.
How can people get a hold of you? What do you have out there, and what's next?
Well, I started making, just out of interest point of view, started making these 10-minute primer videos that are in English for Xingyi Quan on my YouTube channel, which I try to release one a month, and they're not supposed to be in depth, but they're supposed to be technically very clear and meticulous in what they present from my Xingyi learning, and that I've started putting on my YouTube channel. So I have a YouTube channel that I'm starting to try populate with at least some things that are of value of an interesting thing of interest to Chinese martial arts, but martial artists in general. And I've started another thing which I'm trying to do just to show and showcase parts of Chinese martial culture here in China. It could be anything that is rarely seen, or just interesting. So there's two things that I'm trying to do every now and then. And of course, I've got that podcast, but my podcast is something that I like to do it in person. That's just the way it is. So we can have a couple of drinks and also just leave it long form, so it can talk as long as possible. So these are the things that I've been busy with, and they're all on my YouTube channel. I think the YouTube channel is probably the easiest way to just find me, which is Mushin Martial Culture. That's the name of the channel. And I guess that's it. Or Facebook. You can look me up on Facebook. Send me an email if you need be. And I made a website for my teacher about more than 10 years ago that honestly hasn't been updated for a while, but it's still up and running. And I can send you the URL. So these are ways to contact me, I suppose.
Will you make any Bagua videos, primer videos?
Maybe in the future. I'm still my key right now is to get through the 5 elements, of Xingyi Quan, and then I'll see what I feel like doing next after that.
Those videos are of a very high quality. I highly recommend them. They are amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. Well,
incredible
I've never done video editing before, so this was also a new thing to learn how to do. So it's been interesting, I'll say that.